Hi, good afternoon. This is your County Executive Ed Day. We're here for our bi-weekly update on COVID-19 here in Rockland County. With me today, as always, is John Lyon, my Communications Director, who's well known as the man behind the curtain. We will introduce him someday to you all. He's younger and much better looking than I, but that's a whole other story. But anyway, we can open up with some good news. I think that's really something that we are yearning for over the past 3+ months. We did not receive many questions today, so I'm going to take you through some of the numbers, and that's the good news I'm referring to. Our hospitalization data represented by two different numbers, those who we know have COVID-19 and those who we suspect have COVID-19. We combine the numbers to get the most accurate and probably the largest score we can, just to be on the safe side. 2 months ago, on April 18th, seems like years ago now, the total numbers of people in these two categories was 317. Think about that, 2 hospitals. 1 month ago, on May 18th, it was 116. Today, the total is 14. Just 14 people in the hospital right now due to what we believe to be, or is in fact, COVID-19. That is just an unbelievable drop, a precipitous downward trajectory, well beyond the goals of flattening the curve. So that's a great thing to report back to you. More to the point, measurements that indicate potential spikes, hotspots, or just an overall increase in infections has evolved from the very first charts that were given out by the state to where we are now. Many of those charts are still there, but this is the one that I think really is compelling. We showed this last week. This is the RT.live. Are we on there, John?
Yep.
Okay, if you look over here, let me make sure I'm right. That's the worst, and this is the best over here where the green is. New York State is, actually, this is yesterday's. New York State is now number 2, only behind Hawaii for the lowest number. And what this chart tells us is that the RT level, all right, if it was below 1, it basically says the virus has stopped spreading. So it's a key measure of how fast this virus is growing. So this chart is really an important piece to look at. And again, you can see this yourself. No, you can't see it that well here. At rt.live, rt.live. I would encourage you to look at it. You can see, you've heard about other states, what they're doing. You can actually go back and check from the latest, which would be today, to last week, 2 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. So you can actually see how we progressed over the past 6 weeks. And that's great. You get a definite sense. And this is what's great about the abilities that we can do now. It's the amount of transparency we can provide people. I think that's one of the reasons why, John, that we are getting less calls, because we're referring people to the websites and they're seeing for themselves what it is. So it's really great. But we really made incredible progress in slowing down this disease. Together we brought Rockland and New York State from one of the worst situations in our nation to one of the best. And that came from proactive steps, very, very difficult. Many of them have been, but they have been taken, and they've been driven by hard data and facts. And again, I am not going to make stories up for you. The bottom line is that there's a lot of learning going on as it relates to this virus. There has been from the very beginning. Remember some of the things that was said early on about, what to do, what not to do. And that all changed as time went along. So there's a learning curve to this. We liken it much to repairing an airplane while you're in full flight. But the information is starting to calm down. We're getting more accurate information. We're learning more about through experience, sadly. But we're finding out more, and we're reporting back more. That's good for many reasons. One, the more you know about this disease and this virus, the better off you are, because you can make good judgments. When you know what you're up against, it's always easier to deal with it. It's the unknown that is that one factor that really causes great anxiety. And that's one thing that we really have to help you with and help all of us with. I'll give you an example. 2 days ago, when we looked at the internal charts we have here in Rockland County, we saw a small spike. Now, that spike was well within the acceptable levels that we are using right now. It was a 2.5% positive test result. Now, with the contact tracing program, which we've mentioned before, something we employed during the measles crisis, we were able to drill down and see precisely where the cases and trace the majority of them to additional testing at a recently opened testing site at the Martin Luther King Center in Spring Valley. So that's why we saw this spike in that area, was only because we were getting additional testing there, which is always good to have. But between that, the contact tracing, and the equipment that we have now that the planning department has put together in conjunction with the health department, we can drill down and identify spots so closely, we pretty much see addresses. And that's how fine-tuned it is. It's something we could never release, obviously, for HIPAA rules, but it gives us a great tool here in Rockland County. We don't know of any other county that has this capability, but for here in Rockland, you have a great capability because of the talents and dedication of some of the people here in Rockland County government. The good news is that the last 2 days, the metrics that we're talking about were 7 cases each. It was the first and second time in a row, 2 days in a row we were below 10. We had never seen below 10 in one day ever since the beginning of this crisis. That is less than a 1% increase each day, and that is just almost a zero out of a number. We're also seeing that the largest proportion of these cases seem to be coming from people who had the illness several weeks ago and are now testing positive because of the increased testing. So again, it's not even we're looking at this as an active virus at this point as it relates to some of this testing. The activity of this virus has certainly come down quite a bit. So the bottom line right now is that there's no spike, no signal of spiking of any significance right now that we're dealing with. Some transparency and honesty. Today, I and the county executives of Dutchess, Orange, and Putnam wrote to Governor Cuomo, and something I've spoken about before here, that the Mid-Hudson region enter Phase 3 of New York Forward for the opening plan tomorrow, June 19th. We've been asking this for a while. This wasn't a last-minute ask. Unless the governor acts on this request, which we have brought up in that control room that we belong to in the Mid-Hudson region, we are currently scheduled to enter Phase 3 on Tuesday, June 23rd, and Phase 4 on Tuesday, July 7th. Now, the governor said that he was going to be guided by facts and by metrics and by data. The 2-week wait period between the 4 phases was something that was basically aligned with some original guidance from the CDC, amount of time it took for infected people to show symptoms and so forth and so on. But we've gone through this already. He has made adjustments in the past based upon on data, on current data, which we have been supplying to him. We have brought this up many times, like I said, and I just share some of the portions of the letter to you. The Mid-Hudson Regional Control Room, we have brought many issues forward, and all for the betterment of the mission. We're all trying to work together to make things better here in not just Rockland, but in the region and the state of New York. We were the ones who brought forward the concerns of our local religious leaders who wanted to engage their respective flocks during moments of national crisis and concern. The protesting that was going on, and thankfully Rockland County was free of violence, and I really applaud the people of Rockland and those who did come here to see their friends for making sure that we did not have a stain on this county like some other places did in the United States. But these ministers, these rabbis, these imams, they wanted to tend to their flock. They wanted to be able to see and engage them in a faith-based effort to deal with the pain and the anger that was out there in the street. It took a number of days. And this is after we presented this as a matter of crisis. A critical decision needed to be made, and it took days to get it done. And at that point, we were allowed 25% capacity to our local houses of worship. That's not how things should work. I'm sorry. I mean, again, I respect the governor for his work and his leadership, but I certainly am not going to be agreeable to taking days to make a decision in a time of crisis, protest, and potentially worse. We spoke to his staff about the economic fairness at restaurants in neighboring states who have began allowing for outdoor dining. You will recall the governor made it very clear he was working with other governors in different states in order to make sure that we're on the same page. He likened it saying just because our regions, Mid-Hudson region abuts the capital region, for example, New York City. We also have other states that are but New York State and specific regions. We have to deal with being tied in next door to Bergen County in Jersey, Westchester and Putnam, for example. They're aligned with Connecticut. So Connecticut had outdoor dining, and they had that starting May 20th. Now, it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out the people in Putnam and Westchester where they were going to be going for dinner, outdoor dining. It was going to be Connecticut, which is right next door to them. And we brought that up. We finally did get some change there, but again, it took more time. And every day we wait, by the way, Connecticut's numbers were better than ours, so it wasn't like they were having a spike there. When we asked this question, we pointed to Connecticut on May 20th, some days later, when we realized that we had a measurement ability as to what was going on in Connecticut, and at that point in time, Connecticut was actually doing better to us on that RT chart, and point of fact, they're with us now, we're all in the top 5. We also had another situation that was a very, very tough for everybody. We pleaded for weeks to get answers for parents of children who require special needs education, and family members who have been unable to visit their loved ones in group homes. The governor eventually acted on these issues, but in the case of our special ed students, I've spoken to Dr. Mary Jean Marsico of BOCES. The response in her estimation came way too late for many of these local districts to implement the necessary health safety requirements implied in the name, the control room. Yet he continues to ignore or delay compelling local input at our request. That's what the control room is supposed to be. Requests that we make are not for political reasons. You have heard that more than I care to comment on. I am not happy when I hear the governor rail against us during the briefings, and because the fact of the matter is we make decisions that protect the well-being and the residents and the future of our communities. That's what we're there for. We heard references the last few days to the need for the counties to catch up to what he's doing. Well, let's be honest about this. When he goes on a broadcast, he lets out what he's going to do. The county executives of the state of New York, the field generals, as it were, have no idea what he's coming out with. None. So we hear it at the same time you hear it. So to make comments that we need to catch up on what's going on, it rings a little bit hollow. We do catch up very quickly, but it's unnecessary. We should at least be afforded the respect so we can clarify, because the first calls you make are going to be to us, town supervisors, mayors. That's who you're going to call. You're not going to call the governor. You're going to call us. And we want to be able to give the information to you accurately. We have to wait from the time it's announced to the time it goes on paper to make sure we're talking about this exact same thing, because it does change. So these are some of the things I think, as a matter of transparency and honesty, I want you all to know how this process is working, and the work that's being done to make sure that accurate information does get to you from your local elected officials.
And as we're speaking about the governor, we're going to jump into one of the questions we received today. The governor, during his briefings, has made clear that, from his opinion, the enforcement of opening rules is up to local governments. Why does it seem that criticism and lack of enforcement is being passed basically back and forth between the state and local governments?
Well, I'm not going to pass anything anywhere. I'll be very honest. I will call it as it is and what it's all about. Would you get my phone, John?
I will.
You hear that noise? That is. I forgot to turn down a phone. You got that? Okay. Anyway, the only orders that's still in effect, we had health department orders that were working in conjunction with the governor's emergency orders, and that was to make enforcement a little bit simpler at that time. That no longer exists. The governor's orders now have been regular and routine. They should be standalone. There should not be any equivocating about that. Whatever is in those orders should be enforceable. The enforcement of these orders falls solely and specifically to law enforcement. Civilian inspectors are not authorized nor empowered to do that. It is up to law enforcement. That means our state police, our local police, our sheriff's department. Those are the agencies that can enforce the orders. But look, let's be honest. What we're doing here is we're translating issues, and Albany is calling the shots, and really to infer otherwise is quite disingenuous. And we're happy to work with this. We are happy to do our job here. But, when he tells us to do our job and enforce his orders, we have, and trust me, we will always do our jobs. That's what we're here for. We, again, are going to be very clear about this. We're asking the governor to do more than just say, enforce my orders. That is not what I think he should be doing. We do need him to be more emphatic We need them to be more directly involved. We need them to be more out in front of this. After all, these are his emergency orders. He needs to be giving more specific direction than do your job. You cannot legitimately keep pointing a finger at local governments and then say the buck stops there. It's easy to point to others when things go horribly wrong and place the blame elsewhere also. That is not going to happen here in Rockland County. We have a climate right now where, and I'll give you a couple of examples which I think everybody will understand. We have a climate right now that's coming out of Albany under the guise of police reform. Does the governor really believe that the police are going to wade into a crowd of 1,000 protesters because they're not walking 6 feet apart from one another? Does he really believe that police are going to wade into a crowd of that large that are angry and upset but they're peaceful, go in and try to make them wear masks? That is absolutely ridiculous. That is not going to happen. I can tell you as a police commander that would never happen. That just makes no sense. Does he really want to see the police go into a school or into a house of worship and remove children who are in a school right now that is not allowable under his law, under his orders? This is where he has to respect something further. He is the leader of the greatest state in the Union. In my humble opinion, he has to use that ultimate bully pulpit. He needs to use it more effectively to gain compliance to his directives. And the bottom line is this: he should be able to command their respect from the vast majority of people who are law-abiding to do this automatically without being told by a police officer, put a mask on. If you cannot socially distance from people, he should not expect to have police officers tell people to socially distance all each other. People here are law-abiding, and by and large they will follow the rules, but he has to make it clear. And in more than just in direct threats, as he has done so to our businesses by threatening to pull their licenses. That's not how you gain compliance in a civilized society, in a free society. And the average person here, frankly, is getting fed up with it. I hear you. He doesn't hear you. I hear you. And you are fed up with rules that seemingly are being applied unequally because you demand that enforcement. So I would suggest that's the way we start coming from Albany.
Are you able to share info? We're progressing through the phases. We would like to enter phase 3 tomorrow. Haven't heard a response yet on that, just for everyone's
awareness. Yes, this is true. We're waiting, hoping.
But is there any info that you can share regarding phase 4? More venues will be able to open, albeit with reduced capacity. Is there a plan to incrementally increase that capacity?
Okay. We're still lacking in the details of phase 4. We just got phase 3 put up a few days ago, I believe it was, maybe less than a week. And many of the standards in place, such as mandating testing for employees in some industries, currently have no end date. So it's a work in progress. I mean, what's been put out by Albany, and we've talked a bit about some of the things that are lacking. These are some of the things that have been very positive. The website is relatively easy to go through, navigate through. It's providing a forum for our businesses to affirm that they have done certain things. It provides for best practices from industries that we've been getting. So there's a lot of good things that are on that website. And this is forward.ny.gov, forward.ny.gov. I would certainly urge you to take a look at that occasionally, especially if you have questions. You could have a simple question: is a certain store going to be open, at a certain point in time? But there's a lot of good information that you might want to look at. This is something that we've been pushing New York State to provide, but unfortunately they don't have the information to share right now. And again, as I said, a lot of this is evolving. So again, in fairness, there's some time necessary. It's a lot of work that's being done on that. So in fairness, we've got to be a little bit more patient, I think.
Yeah, and what we've seen is as we approach each new phase with at least a week to a few days before somewhere in the state is approaching, that's when the guidance for the additional phase will be posted. So once we get a little closer to phase 4, that's likely when we'll see some of that information. Exactly. So moving off topic a little bit, first I want to point out your I voted sticker on your shirt today. Can you tell us a little bit about early voting and absentee ballots? Because we have seen a lot of questions about those.
All right. I got an email yesterday from a couple who told me that they were panicking. They had sent an absentee ballot application, and that absentee ballots were mandated to be mailed to every voter in the state. Okay, so that created obviously a lot of work on the part of our local Board of Elections, which are a separate entity, even though the Rockland County Board of Elections is called. They report to the State Board of Elections, not to me. So this couple sent me the note. They were in a panic. They didn't get it yet. They had gotten the application. You mail the application, and that's not a ballot, that's an application. You're supposed to get your ballot mailed back to you, and you have to fill it out and have it postmarked by the end, by 5 o'clock on the 23rd. That's primary day, remember correctly? On the 23rd. It has until 7 days to travel to the Board of Elections to be counted. So that's how it works. I responded back to them. I said, basically, I feel your pain because I mailed my ballot application back also, and I have not received my ballot yet. So we were told, we actually asked a question, we were told that about 27,000 ballots went out a couple of days ago, and they expect them to be landing at your door by tomorrow. Now, what I did, obviously, I am not waiting for my ballot, and no, I'm not going to be able to vote twice, don't worry about that. There's a check to the system. I did early voting. I went right over to Clarkstown, even though I'm a Haverstraw resident right now. Early voting is being done at the various town halls. Actually, it's being done for North Rockland at Haverstraw Town Hall on Rosman Road. In Clarkstown, it's being done at Clarkstown Town Hall on Maple Avenue. Orangetown, it's being done on Orangeburg Road in Orangetown. In Ramapo Town Hall on Route 59. So you can go there. The times are on the Board of Elections website. They're typically during the day. Today was 12 to 8, I believe, for all the towns at the same time-wise. So what I would suggest is if you are concerned, or maybe if you are not going to be around for the weekend now, maybe take a 3-day weekend somewhere, and you won't be back till Tuesday, and you may not get to your mailbox until Tuesday, which would maybe too late if you can't get postmarked. You can early vote for a couple of the rest of the
Sunday is the last day.
Sunday's the last day. Okay, so you can go tomorrow, you can go Saturday, you can go Sunday. It's 3 days to go. So go to rocklandgov.com, rocklandgov.com, and go to the Board of Elections website. And again, you can vote in any town. Vote early. They have cross-checking done. It's electronic books now. So like I said, I went to Clarkstown because it was convenient to me. I was here working. So you don't have to go to your own polling location nor your own town hall. You can go to whatever one is convenient to you. So that makes it a lot easier. So what I'm trying to say is if you're concerned in any way, feel free to do early voting. You can also vote on primary day if you wish. But if you want to get out of the way and you're anxious, by all means, put the anxiousness away, go vote, and trust me, your vote will not be, don't try to vote twice, because it won't be counted. It's a wrong thing to do. Very bad.
But they do have checks in place. If you asked for an absentee ballot and go and do early voting, right. Even if you sent your absentee ballot in, it would be cross-checked and it would not be counted. And real quickly to address what people are voting on now, there are congressional primaries.
Yes.
There are state senate primaries. There are several local races.
Yeah, they're all primary elections. So if you are a registered Democrat, there is a race. If you're a registered Republican, there is a race. If you're a non-affiliated voter, what they call a NOP, an NOP, you do not vote in these primaries. In this particular case, conservatives, I don't know if they have a primary. I really don't. I don't believe so, but I'm not sure. But what you can do, again, go to the Board of Elections website. They should have sample ballots there, and you can find it exactly going in what your options are going to be, instead of guessing as we're doing here right now. So just again, go to rocklandgov.com, rocklandgov.com, Board of Elections website, look at the sample ballot location, and you can actually see, and there's an address lookup, so you'll know exactly what you can and cannot vote on.
Okay. And one more off-topic question before we wrap up for the day. Clarkstown Supervisor George Holman announced on Facebook last night that the town board would be voting to put a referendum on the ballot for November regarding lifting the restrictive covenant on the Palisades Center. Where do you stand on that issue?
I've been very clear in this issue for at least a couple of years now. The Palisades Center Mall, like every other mall in this country, has to re-image themselves. There's no getting around it. Retail has changed, and it's not dead. Retail is doing quite well. We've gotten good sales tax revenue for the past number of years. So that is a misnomer. What is happening here is the malls themselves are changing. Entertainment is a big part of that. Some have hotels. The Palisades Mall is the most popular visitation spot in Rockland County. It has been for years. So the Palisades management, or Palisades Mall management, have been trying to work out something where they could use unused space in the existing mall. There's no additional footprint. It would bring additional parking, and they've been trying to work this out with Town of Clarkstown. There's been some issue about the referendum. I'm not going to belabor the entirety of it all, but here was my position. This ended up in court. My position has been clear and absolute. You don't want to have policy decided in court. We had that happen here once. People will remember the name. It's called Morant. You do not want to have that happen here. If you want to set policy, you negotiate. You get the parties together, have a managerial, upper executive level conversation. What do you want? This is what we need. You advocate for your own side. Obviously, government will advocate for the people and the needs of the people here in the town of Clarkstown. And more people would put their proposals forward. And typically what happens, if they have an agreement or an arrangement, usually both parties walk away not fully happy. That's usually called a good deal. But at the end of the day, what I predicted over 2 years ago, that if that did not happen and this trajectory continued going the way it was going, we would be losing stores. That would affect sales tax revenue in particular, property tax revenue in particular. I believe Clarkstown sees over $20 million in tax revenue. I think the school tax district is most of that money. We see over $20 million in sales tax revenue. So there's a lot of money involved here, and I've made it very clear that we to get out of the courtroom and make an arrangement together and work it out. That is the only way I see this happening. So what has happened is some stores have closed. Revenues are now down. When revenues go down in a mall, and on top of having a pandemic, the value of the mall goes down. Now there's a potential of a tax cert that may be filed. That's something I brought up a couple of years ago also. To see some movement is positive. I'm glad for that. But again, it's frustrating. This has to get out of the courtroom. There has to be a decision made, whether it be by ballot or whether it be by negotiation. But this has got to stop, because there's no good end to this the way it's going. That's the simplest way I can put it right now.
And before you close, one last bit of news that just came into my email. There were no additional deaths to report today, which is yet another sign that we're moving in the right direction here. Absolutely.
And a couple of quick things that we have. We announced an economic development committee called Rockland Commerce. This is something that was being put into place when the Rockland Economic Development Corporation decided to close shop. The CEO and executive director of that organization, Jeremy Schulman, we took him on board and replaced our previous economic development director, Lucy Rezaposky. Jeremy has a tremendous background. It was a perfect fit for him. He actually worked in county government in the planning department. He brings a vast wealth of understanding and knowledge to his job. A very cerebral man, and he just does an amazing job. So the working he was doing was getting some of the folks from the REDC and other community leaders, not-for-profit leaders, people who are in the various industries in Rockland County, and forming this RockCom committee. So this committee will include myself and he on the committee, because I am the Chief Economic Development Officer of Rockland County by virtue of the charter. And we'll be working together going forward at a time where certainly every effort should and needs to be made to help local business. I will remind people that before this pandemic hit, in 5 short years, we added $8.4 billion in ratables. Yes, you heard that right. $8.4 billion in ratables. Now what that does, it broadens your tax base. It minimizes the impact on local taxpayers, because the more taxpayers and more wealth you have, and you have a tax bill that we have to pay in Rockland County, because we have to make a budget and get revenues. There's more people, more entities that can pay taxes. It's less of an impact than everybody else. It helps keep us along up to speed on rising costs. So we see great things coming out of committee that is going to be directly beneficial to all the people of Rockland by extension, through the fact that we'll be working with businesses to make sure that they are successful and they are contributing to the treasury of Rockland County, which minimizes the contribution of private property taxpayers. Also, we started something else here, ROAS, ROAARS. It's a Rockland on the Road to Recovery stimulus. And as you probably know, I mentioned it earlier, I believe, that businesses who are opening up on the whatever phase they may be in have to file for safety plans. They have templates are on this forward.ny.gov website. So they file on that website. They sign an affirmation saying that they did it, they understand it. They print a copy out of it. So anybody inspecting that location will be able to see what that says, take a look and see if what's on the floor, say of a restaurant, matches up to what the plan's supposed to be. And that was a nice step, and it was meant to provide, obviously, health and safety to people who are coming there, but also some sense of comfort to people knowing that there was a process that is inspectable, that will be adhered to. We took it one step further. We ended up, I gotta find this now, here it is. Some of you maybe in my age group or close, remember the Good Housekeeping seal of approval. Now, that's how this idea started. This is what is going to be hung up in the. We mailed these out to every business that has completed the affirmation on forward.ny.gov, and we're asking them to put this in the window of their store or put it on display so people can see it. And what this basically tells people is that the location has been inspected, it is safe, it's compliant with all the expectations to prevent additional spread of the virus. It's a visual, I think. And again, we recognize very early on that this experience we've had here in Rockland County and this nation has really got a lot of people very anxious, and for good reason. They've been holed up in their house. Many people, they have not gone to work. They have very little social interaction with people, and that's a lot more important than people, I think, believe. Until maybe now they're realizing it. That interaction with people is a tremendous thing to have. So we want to assuage the concerns as much as we can. It's a human thing to do. It's something that is important for people, because we're not robots. We're not not robots. You just cannot just flip a switch and pop out. And we said this, that the businesses who are looking to get their customers and their clients back and their workers back got to do more than check the box. They just can't say, "Yes, we did everything wonderful. We signed an affirmation. We're good." People are still concerned. A lot of people came out over the past few days. It's great to see. I had some wonderful times. It's good to interact with people again. But there are still people who just are very concerned. And these are things that are necessary to help people feel a little better, a little more at ease, a little more comfortable. And that's a key piece to not just clients, as I said, but your workforce also. So with that, I just will share real quickly a couple of sites. I mentioned rocklandgov.com, rocklandgov.com. That is your county website, a plethora of information on many issues, including COVID-19. ny.gov, ny.gov, that is the state website. If you have a need to read the executive orders, typically a night that you can't get some sleep, it'd be a good time to do it. It's a lot of orders there. Those orders can be found on that website. Forward.ny.gov, that is a more recent website, as we mentioned, that contains much information on the requirements for industries and businesses to comport themselves with. It talks about the phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the various different things that are going on right now as it relates to the reopening of our economy here in Rockland County and the state. And finally, rt.live, rt.live. I think that probably is one of the most interesting sites that you'll see, because you can really track the nation to see how things are going on. You can check and see how much truth there is to how many states are not having spikes. So you get very specced up on what's happening. But most of all, in this particular case, it's going to provide you a sense of added comfort when you see where New York is. We are number 2 behind Hawaii. So I don't think we can give you number one. I don't see why not, and the governor sure will agree with me on that. We may not agree on everything, but I do agree with the governor that New York State should be number one. However, I also insist that Rockland County be number one as far as the counties in New York State. So with that, we have a wonderful weather coming up in this weekend. I'll wish you all a wonderful weekend a day early. Maybe you can do a little bit of a getaway tomorrow. And also, I just want to acknowledge tomorrow is Juneteenth. Juneteenth is was June 19th, 1865 in Galveston, Texas. Was the slaves in Texas had not known they were emancipated 2.5 years earlier on January 1st, 1863 by Abraham Lincoln through the Emancipation Proclamation. They were unaware of that. They were slaves for 2.5 years more. The Army came in and let the slaves know they were free, and they were freed. So it is an historical moment in the history of this country. And there will be an event up in Haverstraw at 6 o'clock at Haverstraw, the Village of Haverstraw Village Hall. I will be up there. There'll be a little celebration up there. So if you have some time and you want to, note a moment in history, come on, please. That stretch of the Village of Haverstraw has some tremendous restaurants. I know they have an outdoor dining there. I probably will be stopping myself in one of those restaurants. So it'll be afternoon and evening to get out. All right. So with that, have a wonderful weekend, and we are going to take a look at the one thing I did forget is the crisis wanes, and because of all these toys we have online, we're seemingly getting fewer questions. As John mentioned, we only had 3 today. There's more clarity revealed as to the conditions and the greater opportunity for you to access the information, as I said. So we're seeing a moderation of the need to do these updates twice weekly, but I believe the updates are helpful, and regardless of that, we plan on a continuation of them. We're just going to see if we do have a need for twice a week. But even if we get through this COVID-19, if we will get through the COVID-19 issue, but as the crisis wanes, which is what was indicated by the governor, we may want to transition a bit to maybe more current issues going on in county government once a week or like that. But we'll make those judgments based upon the needs of you, the needs of the viewer, people who are looking for information. If you have a need for twice a week, we will continue doing twice a week. So we'll make that judgment a little bit maybe next week. Yep. So anyway, with that, have a wonderful weekend. And John has something to say.
Just before you sign off, if you do have questions, feel free to message the Rockland County government page, the county executives page. We're happy to look into things outside of these time frames. I know a lot of you have exchanged messages with both of us, so we're here to help, right, whether we're having one of these or not.
Can anybody see this? Okay, this is almost like a motto in this office. This is a cup I got the first day I walked in the door here in Rockland County when we were nearly broke. And the only thing I could say to myself at that point is, got to take this one day at a time. Look how far we came. And we're in a very similar situation. One day at a time. We're going to get through it. Have a good afternoon.